So, from your opinion, your experience being in leadership positions, seeing lots of both men and women, but it's specifically in this role at Hera Hub, mostly women, and how they bring themselves into the world, what areas have you been really thinking about, maybe reading about? I know we've been talking about quite a bit as it relates to that topic of confidence, and what do you think builds confidence? And we'll just frame it as in women.
Right. I think that we tend to kind of jump to the opposite extreme. If we want to feel more confident, right, we say there is a way to do that. And I think actually there are many ways, but one of those ways that we've tried on as women is to, pretend we're men, kind of take on those really strong, structured, loud approaches to things, which is a great exercise, I think, to try and see how that feels. But I think it's something deeper. And I think when it comes to women, what I'm learning and what I'm feeling is it's very unique and it's specific, and it doesn't have to look that same way. It still can, but it doesn't have to look that same way. I have been exploring topics around community and how that helps us build confidence, which is very relevant to the role I get to play here in Hera Hub. Also kind of play and body awareness, as well as just connecting to ourselves as human beings, rather than a masculine, feminine, or a particular, like, I have to, or I want to be, or this is my job. But like, if you're a human being and not a human doing, what is that like? It means having self-compassion and giving yourself space to be genuinely yourself. So those are some of the topics that I've been really diving into. Now, to help guide and open my mind around the concepts, I recently finished a book that was recommended that I absolutely love and would further recommend. The Confidence Code is a fantastic way to start to get into the conversation of confidence. What I appreciate the most about the book is the way they went about learning and exploring confidence. They interviewed a lot of people. They are journalists. They were strategic. They found scientists to talk to. They found athletes to talk to, women in power, politicians. They really stretched and tested all of their theories and found facts, figures, scientific evidence. And it helped guide me, because there were some things maybe I was afraid to ask myself or afraid to go there. The word I like to use is bold. So if I were going to be bold right now, what would I be doing? Or if I wanted to be my bold self, I like to say I'm bolder every day. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? Right. And it doesn't mean that I have to do crazy, crazy things. But if I start to get that little tiny voice that says, or what if we just didn't do that thing? Or, it doesn't make you feel great to be in an anxious position or to put yourself out there. Or what if you just did that thing you're really good at and that's comfortable and you can be confident in that because you have the skill. But what I found was there was an answer to that little question in the book, and it's about taking risks. Mm-hmm. And that really aligned with me. So as I was finding gems throughout this book, it was reminding me of those things that I've been trying to do to continue to build confidence and not just say I'm a confident person, because there are many times when I don't feel that way. Mm. And then I can say, but that doesn't change who I am. There are moments where I feel confident. There are moments where I don't feel confident. And in the places where I don't, there's a challenge there. There's a question, there's an exploration, there's a learning. And I think the mindset shift of wanting to be a learner is an important one if somebody wants to have more confidence. And there's a lot of space and time for reflection, observation. I'm going to overgeneralize, since we're also talking with or about women in this regard as well, that we tend to ruminate, mm-hmm. right? And spin over ideas, and they stay stuck in our mind. I did not like, and neither did the authors of the book, when they said there is a biological reason for this, that we are more susceptible, I guess would be a word to use. Like, it is more possible that this is going to happen to us than someone who's biologically male. But it also gave me permission all of a sudden. I was like, oh, nothing is wrong with me. This is just something I have to either learn to deal with, or I can go check that's part of me being me and being human. I'm not going to take that on. I'm not going to battle that. I want to put my energy somewhere else. And so I can observe it and say, I'm ruminating right now. What are some tools to get out of that? And so my toolbox is widening. That might not be just power poses, which heck do so much for us. Power poses are great. But how do I take it to the next level? How do I get there in my mind? How do I slow myself down in a moment? How do I overcome fear?
I think people believing in themselves is the base for confidence.
Right.
Right. Yeah. You said it really well, being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's part of the premise of my book is, that unconventional wisdom that my parents gave me of, like, truly, I don't care. I don't care about what other people think. I don't give a damn. I'm beating to my own drum, like, was the biggest blessing in my life, frankly. And a lot of other great things lined up. Like, I had a father that told me I was amazing every day. And that's also quite helpful in building confidence in young women. And inadvertently, the Confidence Good book, we keep referencing, that idea of having your child set their own goals and then celebrating their success as they reach their own intrinsic goals is one of the pillars for building confidence in women. And luckily, I hit the lottery and had parents that did that for me.
Yeah.
Autonomy,
agency,
yes,
support. I mean, and I use community for those things. I think that where my confidence suffered growing up, I found it in community.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have everything that I need, and this isn't a parent bashing session, I did not have the parents you had. I had very different parents, but I'm not worried about what people are going to say about the conversation you and I are having right now. I'm in the conversation you and I are having right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good example. I don't have a lot of anxious thought around this right now.
Yeah.
But more of that adrenaline feeling than anything else, because it's exciting. Yeah. Yesterday, I had one of the scariest moments regarding confidence. So it was an interesting timing that this is coming up. I was in a room full of people, smart, like specialized, experienced, knowledgeable people in the world of business, both male and female. And there was 3 hours of information and then the Q&A at the end. And I thought, remember that moment in the book where they said women don't raise their hands that much to ask questions? I wrote down 3 questions. All I have to do is pick one. And as I'm sitting and stirring and the feelings are starting to happen, and which question do I ask? A gentleman asked a question and I couldn't focus on my questions anymore because I wanted to respond to his question. And that's when my heart really started pounding, because instead of just practicing being bold and confident in this moment, I was overwhelmed with the need to respond. And my body went, oh no, but you probably shouldn't do that. You should let the speakers respond. You should. And that's when I'm hearing shoulds. That's when I know this is the place where I have to do something. So I raised my hand and it was very awkward because nobody saw me at first. And I just kept the hand up. I was like, all I have to do is keep my hand in the air. And I focused on that one task. And eventually they did come around and say, oh yes, do you have a next question? We will probably address this later. And I said, oh, if we're having this conversation later, I would like to be a part of it. I have a direct response to that question. So I didn't bail on myself. I didn't back out. And my heart was pounding. It's pounding right now, remembering what I went through. But I went home feeling very confident, knowing I wanted to try and do something. I challenged myself and I did it. No one said we were allowed to respond to each other's questions, but I decided to jump in there anyway, in a room full of people that I could have easily said, I don't belong here. And things like that, risks like that really add up, because in the 6 months I've been with Hera Hub, every time I've had that kind of opportunity, I've spoken up, and it has made me feel very welcome and powerful and connected. And yeah, that's a very long way of saying, here are some of the things I'm exploring around confidence.
That's a great illustration. I'm so glad you shared that. And to your point, very timely, since it just came up yesterday.
Yeah.
A lot of it is kind of an outward looking in perspective, right? You know, this is happening outside, people are looking in. And I think that sometimes people will try to drive confidence from that confirmation on the outside, right?
Like an external validation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that outward looking in, the extrinsic versus intrinsic. And what I'm hearing you say, especially as you use that word, like being in your body, using play, you know, the humanness, you know, whatever words you want to put around it, is, from my understanding, your perspective on this is much more that intrinsic, right? Where community to some extent is more of that extrinsic. So maybe you can talk about, you know, as those three kind of pillars, you know, of what you're seeing and what builds confidence, how does that intrinsic versus extrinsic sort of play into this?
So when it comes to things like play, what I like about play is you can get lost in that moment. You forget yourself. And I mean that in a good way, not that you disconnect with who you are and what you're aligned with. It just, life becomes very simple. People ask us to think about when you were in kindergarten, what were the rules of the world, you know, to simplify, try to get back to a really easy state of being. And when you're in a state of play, you're not overthinking what you're doing. You're not worried about what other people think. You might be doing it by yourself or with other people, which sometimes it can still be exciting to have that shared moment. But what's happening inside for me in a moment of play is that everything else gets quiet and falls away. And that's a really magical space to come from. I think that while play for me is a physical activity, it is something that also happens in our mind, in our state of mind. So I could say, how much exercise are you getting? And you can say, well, I have a gym membership and I go 3 times a week. And then I'll probably ask, is that gym membership something that's on your task list? Or is it something that when you go, your mind disappears and you don't have to think about it? You don't have to think about getting there, doing it, and you're not worried about the next time you have to go. For some people, exercise is their kind of release in form of play, and it's not extra work. And for some of us, it's just another thing on that task list that can be ruminated or make us feel stressed. So I like to use the word play, even though I am talking about something physical.
Yeah.
It could be dancing. For me, it's definitely dancing. Though I do have even more fun when I'm doing it with other people. I don't care what I look like. I don't care if I'm good at it. I can let go of that. Some people say, absolutely not. I look like a fool. I feel like a fool, you know, and I say, well, you know, let's all do the hokey pokey then and just get over it. It might be, let's see, what else could it be? Well, is there a thing that you do for play? Something where you forget about time passing and you're just in a zone and the rest of the world gets quiet in your head. And I think people who have a hard time accessing the physical idea of play to relax or release their mind, I might ask them like what other activities they can do. For some people, it might be painting.
Yeah.
Right. They can get into a zone or a space there where their mind relaxes and releases. There's still a concept of play there. Like, what was that thing when you were a kid that your mom would call you in from dinner And you'd be like, yeah, just a minute. And then mom's like dragging you inside because you can't break away from it. You know, that headspace of nothing else matters. And this is really fun. And I just want to stay here is a nice one to practice. Well, how does this relate to confidence then? Right. I think some of the times that I experience confidence the most is when my mind shuts up and gets out of my way. So if I'm practicing bringing this space in my life where my mind can get quiet, then I have more ability to tap into quiet moments. If I am waking up thinking about my day, thinking about the next thing throughout my day, only running myself off of a list, execute. By the time I get home, now I'm looking for a distraction because I'm just trying to figure out how to turn off all that adrenaline and sound. For some people, it's just familiar. It's just the sound in their head. But if we really look at it, wouldn't you rather have just a moment of quiet or be able to turn it off a little sooner? And so that could be a moment where you invite play, but maybe you're also exhausted. So if you practice play and you practice getting in that mindset of dropping away from everything else, those moments can become better and easier. We rest better, we recuperate well, we can be more confident.
A lot of people will go home and to turn off, they might have a drink, right? External versus pick up a paintbrush, more, coming from within you, so to speak. So having those practices.
Yeah, I think the practice is important. And I think, wouldn't it be easier to say, go practice things that are fun and enjoyable for you, then practice your power poses 3 times a day and be vulnerable with yourself in the mirror. You come home and you want to unwind. So you have a glass of wine and turn on NCIS, guilty. And you don't pick up that paintbrush or turn on that song or dance for 5 minutes or hula hoop or whatever or go for a walk. If you're not practicing those moments of play and disconnection, and then you also don't take advantage of it in that moment where you are tired and it might take a little bit of energy to initiate that play moment, is later you go, I could have taken care of myself and should have done this instead. And it becomes a way of punishing ourselves. There's a word for this, right? When we should on ourselves and we start we reprimand ourselves.
Yeah.
For not doing what we could have done. Instead of saying, I was tired, here's the humanness, right? I was tired. I made a choice. I wish I had instead done this other thing. So maybe this weekend I'm going to make time for that. Yeah. So that it's in more of my natural practice. I've gotten so much better at going on walks. And I used to do it a lot. And I got disconnected from it. Having a dog helps. But even then, I wasn't going on as many walks as I have been lately. And it's a really nice way to loosen and relax my back, to let thoughts come and go however they want. Practice a breathing exercise if I want to, listen to a podcast if I do want some more knowledge from my day. So it doesn't have to mean that I'm completely checked out from the world, but it's a different energy. It's a different state. And I think the most important part of play for me is that it brings us very present. And I know that being present is what makes me feel confident in a moment where I could start shaking. As a background as a teacher and having to present to large groups of people, I had the opportunity to go to Mexico through a program called Teacher on the Road in my last job. And I went to 3 to 4 different locations every day for 2 weeks, Monday through Friday, and gave a 20 or 45-minute presentation. I created slides, and that slide deck would take me either 20 or 45 minutes, depending on how much time they gave me. I would figure out what technology was in the room, how many people were going to be in the room, what their level of English was. And I mean, I could make that in 5 minutes. I could adjust my presentation. because I did this every day for 2 weeks, I started getting better and better and better. And I realized when I got back how much I loved presenting, and it changed my teaching. It changed the way I trained people. And what happened was I stood still. There were a lot of moments that I would just be quiet or be calm and let everything sink away and just be really, really hyper present. And I felt strong. And I realized it doesn't matter what the next thing is that comes out of my mouth. Like, what a nice feeling to be standing in a room. I would go and there'd be 5 people, and the next moment there'd be 140 people. So in a room full of 140 people talking into a microphone, which I still don't like using microphones, and realizing I could stand there and do absolutely nothing and be fine. Like, for some people, that would be really stressful, right? And then choosing when to speak again. Being present and practicing that in play can help with those moments as well.
So how does community play into this?
Yeah, so I think the intrinsic, extrinsic that you were describing, community can be a bit of both. I think it's more natural for us to understand how it's the external, the extrinsic form of that, because we can get validation, and we're getting the atta girls, and we feel the support and the love, and we're identifying cheerleaders and cheering for others and seeing ourselves in each other. I think that's a natural way to do it, but I don't want to discount that. I think that there's also something that's happening internally when we're part of a community. We have a sense of belonging. We feel safe, which means we're more willing to take risks. We can be outside our own comfort zones, which is important for learning and taking risks and trying new things, while still being in a familiar space, because a community of people really generates an environment for us. And if you ask yourself, how safe do I feel in my community? How connected am I to the people in my community? Would I want to do an open mic or karaoke with them? Would I want to present a totally new business plan or idea? Would I want to go shopping with them? Have a drink with them? What is my level of comfort with these people? And how much risk would you be willing to take? You can really start to see how community creates safe space for people. And when you feel like you belong, you feel connected, you can also trust that someone's going to say, hey, you need to look in the mirror, or, hey, that was incredible. You should believe in yourself more. Keep going. Shout out to Lisanne. She really helped me. I took on a big challenge and really wanted to help execute our 10-year anniversary celebration. And I had lots of ideas and kept saying my ideas and then going, but I don't know. What do you guys think? And here's another one. Well, but do you think that's okay? And Lisanne was like, your ideas are great. Stop second guessing them. And I was like, okay. She gave me permission. She's being my cheerleader in that moment. Yes. Thank you. Because while I wasn't displaying confidence at that moment, she was able to confidently support me. And I, every time after that, thought, Lisanne gave me permission already. I have a community backing me up. If I fail, I'm going to say, hey, I went for it. You're in this with me, right? You're not alone. And I think that that's an important aspect of community. And the world is big. And if we can make it smaller and smaller, it's the same idea of, how do you eat an elephant? Not that we want to eat elephants, but it's the metaphor that many use, and it's one bite at a time. Yeah. So if you have a friend or friends or family or community or a larger community, then you can kind of practice and stretch yourself until you see what you're capable of doing. Yeah. And the better you get at something and the more practice you have, I think the more confidence naturally builds and is boosted as well.
when you are in community, when you are giving, when you are leading, whatever you want to call it, the attention is not on yourself, right? It's on supporting others. And we know the benefits, the health benefits of helping others, feeling like we're of service, servant leadership, whatever we want to call it. And that, not always, does the person have to know you help them, right? To have that feeling come over you, and the benefits of those feelings come over you. So much research is done in this. And so to your point, that the feeling safe in community and feeling like you can step out and be yourself in that community, I think is so important and part of that confidence building, as you're saying.
Completely. Yeah. There's something really nice that happens when you turn the attention off of yourself and onto something else. And it's not about you anymore. You can get out of your own way in that way as well. I'm contributing, I'm giving, I'm supporting you right now. You're giving me something to focus on that for many of us is natural. So it is kind of mindless. We don't have to be stuck in a headspace while we're doing it. We're not overthinking whether or not it's right or wrong. We're just there. We're just supporting. We're giving, whether that's our ideas or our time or energy, lots of ways to give back to our communities. And you're right, there's been a lot of work done around mental health in this regard. Even just practicing gratitude, right, just changes so much. And if I'm thinking about other people, I'm actually going to keep that in mind in regards to another example of play. Like, I don't have to think about it as like what clears my head. Thinking about other people, my stuff gets out of the way. Right. And I know there are people out there that say, yeah, but I focus too much on other people and not about myself. Well, okay, then give yourself some time. But if you're in that stressed space and you don't know how to get away from yourself, think about someone else for a minute.
No, you're right.
Or help someone else.
Exactly. And I want to emphasize that juxtapose there, because we do hear conflicting messages sometimes, right? Like, stop giving of yourself. People who haven't set boundaries and they're just giving, right? Go within, focus on yourself, meditate, think. But I think, like everything, a Libra here, right? It's about balance, right? Yeah, there may be times to be self-reflective, to meditate, but don't let it turn into, you called it rumination. I call it the hamster wheel. Yep. The replaying over and over again. Yeah. There's that ebb and flow between the two. And I think sometimes, it's when people get stuck on one side of the pendulum or the other that causes that imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And there are people that say, oh, you should just, give yourself, give all the time. And then it's like, give to yourself as well. And then if you kind of get stuck on you, go back out again. And balance is a great word. And I know for a lot of people that works. A word I use is harmony, right? Because sometimes people can over-equate balance with equality, and that's okay. But harmony could mean things are not equal, but they're still working very well together. So there are days where I'm focused on our members. I'm focused on everything that's going on here. And my brain is not worried about me at all. And then maybe I spend a 30-minute walk thinking about my life. Do I have to spend 8 hours thinking about members and 8 hours thinking about myself? Maybe not. But there can be harmony in how I see the connections between things as well, which another thing I learned in the Confidence Code book. Women have more white matter in our brains and men have more gray matter in their brains, which means we have certain tendencies that are different. It's biology. You don't have to do anything about it. You can develop more skills if you want to. It's not a limiting factor, but we as white matter brained people have the ability to make connections between things faster. We can take a lot of data and make decisions quickly. So when you're thinking about multitasking, when you're thinking about, the kids and the dinner and the work, but then you're also noticing how that conversation you had with your girlfriend is the same thing that's happening on TV. And then there's a section of the book that you're reading. Yes, these are things that are happening in your brain and you're doing a great job. You can start to be aware of these moments and go, oh, yeah, it's not weird that I do this. It's not bad that I do this. It's not overly great either. It's just, yes, you can just be confident in that moment and what you're doing. And I think seeking harmony, accepting where we're at, working on being present, just slowing down and dropping in if we can, and practicing that even when we're feeling really good can contribute to building our confidence. And that might mean giving, as you're saying, and thank you for bringing that into the fold, or, using it as a safe space for yourself. I really like the fact that the word integration and integrity have a relationship. Speaking of making connections, for a long time, integrity was a value that I talked about, how to have integrity, but also being a thing that is integrated is really interesting to me. Letting connections happen, letting that beautiful thing happen where pieces are connecting to other pieces, and realizing that you're putting that together can feel really good. And another book that I'm reading, there was a woman she's in sobriety now, and she says her one thing is her sobriety, and that she has to be an integrated person, and that means she can't be two people. Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. She is who she is because she has to be one person. If she becomes two people, it affects her sobriety. And I really liked that image, because confidence to me can be about just knowing and being comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
One of the simplest definitions I've heard that I really liked was the stuff that turns thought into action. So if I know and am comfortable with who I am, even if I don't necessarily have all the labels or they change all the time, but I have a thought and I know what to do, or I trust myself to do that, I think this is confidence. And I like this path that I'm going down with these thoughts. So I'd be excited to continue to chat anytime around it.
As you know, I've done 2 speaking engagements this week, one to Cal State San Marcos, and then just last night to San Diego State University, a bunch of entrepreneurship students. And this conversation around confidence has come up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I continue to say, I would love your feedback on this, or your perspective, your angle, if you will, is I see a lot of folks who struggle with that confidence, so overly concerned about what other people think. The over concern about how you're being perceived, what people are thinking about you. You gave the example, I'm at an event, there's a bunch of people, I ask a question, right. I don't ask the question.
Right.
Inherently, let me pose it this way, inherently, if you didn't care, if you just did not give a shit.
Yeah.
About what anybody in that room was thinking about you, right? Would you have been more inclined to jump in and ask the question? Do you think that had any effect on the hesitation?
I'm going to simply say yes and then clarify. I think it comes to part of my need to also be a little bit more diplomatic, right? That it's not concern that they'll look or think of me in a specific way, but that it is a natural tendency for me to want to keep harmony in a different sense, like harmonious, right? Having things feel good and everybody be okay. And which is also a trait that women tend to have more as well. we tend to nurture that a little bit more often. We don't want to rock the boat. And so, but sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like I still have to say that thing, or I still have to do that thing. And the journey I'm on right now in connecting with myself and my confidence is I see these as practice opportunities. If I just do it anyway, what's the worst that can happen? We've all heard that, like, if fear wasn't a factor, what would you be capable of? I heard that a long time ago. I'm building a totally new relationship to the idea now, though, in practice. I want to be able to speak up. I want to be able to participate. I want to be a part of that group of people. I want to sound intelligent. I want my imposter syndrome mind to shut up, whatever those things are. And maybe kind of how I think about play, exercises and practice in I don't care in, again, incremental ways can help build up to that. Or just one big risk, right? Which women tend to be slightly more risk averse, and men are much more willing to take risks. This man did not care what anybody thought about what he was saying. And it was the most controversial statement of the entire night. And I was about to combat him as a female in a room. I was like, I know what to say. I know what to say. It was insane. And then part of me was like, it's cool that it'll happen in a quiet setting. I'm still, and when we walked out of the room, actually, to wrap that story up, I saw him. I looked around and I was like, oh, he bailed, he's not here. Like my ego got a little like tinkled. And I was like, all right, girl, like you're wearing a persona right now. It's probably a little too much.
Yeah.
Then I saw him sitting on a couch and I didn't go over there right away. And I was like, yeah, see, hey, ego, where'd you go? I kind of called myself out in that moment, was like, I'm going to get myself a water and some of these cheese squares, and I'm going to go sit down next to him and see what happens. And I did. And they recognized me, them being him and his wife. And do you want to come over here and have that conversation now? And I was like, yeah, I do.
Good. And how'd it go?
And it was good. I was proud to take on a role in that moment it wasn't really about me either. I took myself out of the equation. I thought, this is important. It connected to a greater idea. And I think that's something that can't be ignored is if you have a big why, it can make certain choices really easy and taking action really easy. Yes. And the why was, I want to be one of those people that breaks the mold. I want to be the girl that's not afraid to talk. And I had lots of practice at 17 years old where I was mad at the world all the time. But like, how do you do that as a woman? How do you stay strong and say, I do know what I'm talking about. I carry weight in this conversation. I'm going to participate and set that example. Because what if someone's watching and they say, oh, thank goodness she said that. Or I wish I had said that too. I want to talk like me. I remember being in my early 20s. I had a lot of friends that were in their 30s, and I couldn't wait to be like them. And what like them meant, which I learned about 5 years later, was I wanted to be comfortable in my own skin. I wanted to feel like I knew who I was. My 30th birthday, I woke up and thought, no one can tell me what to do anymore. I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was waiting until I was 30 to have that. But now I'm 35. I don't mind sharing my age. And I'm like, wow, I really didn't know at 20 how much people were still kind of shaking in their own skin in their 30s. But it is true. We know a lot more about ourselves. We know how we want to interact in the world more. Yeah. It's not perfect. I'm not everything I've ever wanted to be, but I'm getting closer, and I'm not going to turn away from myself, and I'm not going to keep connecting to that bigger reason of what's important here. Can I open this person's mind a tiny, tiny bit? That was a really exciting idea to me, is if I can get him to come to this side for a moment, I might impact his life. Yeah. Or his wife's, or the people he's working with. Yeah. Or maybe not. Maybe he went home and was like, that silly girl, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I got good practice.
But the moral of the story is you don't care.
I don't care. I think it's also, I can't care. Yeah. Exactly. Right. If I cared, it would just it muddies the waters.
Totally. But so many people do. So many people would have continued to ruminate on that conversation and say, well, what if I had said this? And what if this, like that is the most pointless thing to do, right? It's not, the conversation happened. It's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
What is the point in ruminating and going over that conversation? Mm-hmm. I think what you just said, Melissa, about, the pivotal age of 30, I think that is what has really affected me this week, and having these conversations with folks that are, 20, early 20s, even late teens in some cases. And then at this dinner last night, there were, 20 people, all students except one of the professors and his wife. And at the end, his wife came up to me. I'm going to call her, probably my age, 50-ish or so. And she said, yeah, it's only been recently that I don't care anymore.
Okay. This is a passion of mine. I think this is why confidence, why we started clicking on this conversation is, yes, this is how I explained it to my best friend's mother, who is like my second mom, who is like, why do you care? Tell me what you want to do. And I said, there's something that happens when we're really young and it gets in our way. Then, like, just fast forward, we start to connect with ourselves and something is happening in our 20s and it's very socially explored. But then there's we suddenly go in, and I put the mark somewhere around 25. From 25 to about 40.
Okay.
There's a shift. And at least in women that I've noticed from my friendships, my family, the women that I interact with. And of course, there's always exceptions and extreme cases of this, but we're like, oh, this is who I am. Or this is what I've always wanted to do. Or, and I knew it all along. Or, I knew this when I was young. And I'm like, what the heck?
Where did we get lost in the middle?
Yeah. And guess what? Now you have to do all that work to unravel all that other stuff that happened in between. So you start connecting to the good stuff. Then you have all this stuff in your way that tells you you can't, or you shouldn't, or you're out of practice, or now you're too old, or you didn't take that class. You don't have that degree. Someone else is doing it better, and they're a mom, and they look like a model. It's just all this stuff that's in the way. So, and then as I explained it to my best friend, I said, in our 20s, we fight really, really hard for these ideas, and we don't necessarily know what they are. Then in our 30s, we start to get clear on what those ideas are, and we don't have to fight as hard. We're starting to get better. And I said, I'm so excited to see what happens in our 40s.
But don't wait, Melissa. Don't.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, but wait, why don't we just keep going now? Why don't I just keep pushing this feeling, this nudge, this idea? Like, I want to work with people in this age range to say, go. Let me be part of your community. Let me be part of your launching pad. Let me be your cheerleader. Let me hold safe space. Let me give you the grace you need. Just go be human, jump in it, fall flat on your face, get up and do it again. Or don't fall on your face. What if you just don't fall on your face and you just feel great about it?